welcome to Heartfire Festival Heart Sparks interview with Trevor Hall and Netanel Miles-Yépez. It's an honor to be here with both of you. Really happy to see us all on screen. So welcome, Trevor. Welcome, Netanel. How are you both doing today?
Doing good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored. Honored to be here.
Awesome, thank you.
So we've been listening to the new album, and we're loving it, and we love all your work in general. Nathaniel and I have actually attended at least one of your shows together, so it's definitely great to host this. And as as people know, Heartfire Festival is really dedicated to deeply exploring the intersection of between spirituality and the artistic process, and not just spirituality as a fashion, but the deep personal journey of spiritual growth and inner work and the challenges that life brings, which I feel is definitely a core theme in Natanel's approach to teaching Sufism, and also a core theme in Trevor, not just your music in general, but the recent kind of trend in this new album and in your recent process really seems to be about grounding the spiritual journey in humanness, in the body, in the challenges and the wholeness of our emotions and our whole process. So I want to maybe just start in an open-ended way, and maybe we can start with you, Trevor, just if you want to share kind of what's brought you to this point, how you feel the music reflects your own transformation and maturation over time.
Yeah, of course. It's a ever what is it? Ever growing process, ever going process. Um, Even though the album has come out and the majority of the songs were written, a while ago, I'm still learning so much. It's still so fresh. That's the beauty of music for me, is that when it comes through, I may not even know what it's for or what it's about or anything like that. I don't try to reason about anything. And it's not until much, much later that the lessons are unpacked and meditated upon. So it's like I said, yeah, it's still a journey. But um, in respect to what you said about grounding and the body and this, that has been an important theme uh, the last year or so, last couple years. I've always been an artist that uh, liked to use music to explore my, consciousness, to really stretch out. And in some ways, I would ignore any like human qualities in myself, right? Because I think that there's a little bit of thinking that those qualities were not as righteous or not as high as like these ideas I was trying to explore. Like the divine and we draw all these lines, we draw all these borders around everything. And so I tended to push a lot of that away, which was really not healthy. And um, the last couple years, it's been about really grounding down it within myself, within my body, exploring my humanness, I guess I like to call it. And in the process, um, a lot of memories have come up, with a lot of different great souls that I've had uh, the fortune of meeting, the blessing of meeting. And when those memories pop up, the thing that touches my heart the most, the thing that seems the most godly, about these people wasn't their like aura or their, love, vibe, whatever. It was their incredible, incredible humanness. And that humanness made them so divine, And that's like a common thread. And that really has been what I've been thinking about for a long time. And that inspired me myself, obviously, to reflect, be like, oh, I think you got this a little twisted, bud. You don't want to suffocate these human emotions and this because everything is God, you know. And so I was drawing a lot of distinctions in my head. I'm a really intense thinker, and I tend to think in a very black and white way. It's really annoying. It's only when music comes along that I'm able to enter a space. I feel like, beyond the black and white realm. That's probably why it's so healing for me. But yeah, so in respect to that, the album has been probably my most grounded piece of work, because it was really going into all of my human emotions, and as a consequence of that, it's just so ironic that I've felt much more in touch with a divine thing, or a you know my spirit, by being with them in my body. And the title is really the story of the title is really beautiful because I've been the last couple years I've been really studying and learning so much more about Baul culture. And the Bauls are a group of people from primarily West Bengal, that are musicians, but they're spiritual practitioners. And they've always been a great influence on me. And I'm lucky to have a Bao teacher. But in the last couple years, I've kind of really stepped into it more, and have been studying with different Bao teachers in this. And the Baos deal a lot with the human and the body. It's their like main kind of focus, is this vessel. And so that has also really influenced the journey, I guess. And it was on a Zoom call, just like this, with a few Baal teachers. We were having a little satsang, and this one Baal teacher was talking about the this focus, this emphasis on the body. And at one point in the conversation, she said, our path is in and through the body. And that's when I heard that and I was like, oh my God, I'm stealing that. That is going to be my album title. So, because I was a little nervous because I had all the songs and everything, and we had these deadlines for the art. My manager's like, "Did you figure out a name yet? Because we gotta like," and I'm like, "I don't have a name. Oh my God, what am I gonna do?" And finally, it was on that call, right when she said it. She said, "I was like, oh my God, that's it." So yeah, sorry to be so long-winded, but the album is really, you're correct in that, and is really probably, like I said, my most rooted work, because of focusing on what is here now, what is right in front of me now, this body, this, these thoughts, these emotions. Don't we can't cut any branch off the tree, the Baals say, right? We let the tree grow, right? I'm not going to cut off my anger or my sadness or this and that. They're all growing from the roots of one, so that makes them one. So that's been really what I've been focusing on, and that's really what the album has to deal with. Yeah.
Thank you, Trevor. Yeah. I think that, I study Jungian psychology, and that Jungian perspective, that individuation isn't just about transcending this world, but about becoming whole and integrated. And so that includes all the branches on the tree. Sometimes, Jungian psychologists don't even realize how heavily he was influenced by different indigenous tribes he had contact with and other esoteric traditions that he was studying and initiated into, and kind of brought some of that into modern society through his psychology. So definitely resonating with that similarity between wholeness in the Jungian sense and not cutting any branches off the tree in a more ancient original source teaching, sounds like. Is it Baal people? I think.
Yeah, it's Baul. It's spelled
Baal.
Baul. And um, I'm sure our professor here knows quite a bit about the Bauls because um, they're very similar to the Sufis, and they take a lot of elements from Sufism, um, Tantric Buddhism, and traditional like Bengali Vaishnavism. So they're kind of a meeting of rivers, so to say, of a lot of different practices. Um, but the word Baul comes from a Sanskrit word Batula, and it means like one who's afflicted with the spirit of the wind. Um, and so they call them like mad, crazy, not like
Mm.
mad like I'm angry with you. It's mad, I'm mad for the spirit. I'm crazy for the spirit. And so they deal, the wind disease. They deal a lot with these secret practices of pranayama and holding the breath, and that's influenced their style of singing and how they sing, and their emphasis is on that nada Brahman, right? The sound Brahman, the creation Brahman. So, yeah, they're just really, they've always been so inspiring for me. And I've been just so lucky to have had association with so many Bao teachers and masters. It's really healed a lot for me. Healed a lot for me, and it continues to do so. So, but yeah, they're pretty wild people.
Beautiful. Nathaniel, do you want to chime in on this subject of immanence and grounded spirituality, and how it's inclusive rather than, you know, pure polarized or purely transcendent?
Yeah, I think it's part of a process of maturation in some ways. You know, when I started out on the path, I was the classic good student, doing all the things right, the apprentice of the master, and and I think that there's a lot of wisdom to approaching things like that. But over time, there's some grit that gets into the shell of of the oyster, that forms the real pearl. And when you start out that way, you think the pearl is the behavior, of being the good student on the path, the good devotee. And it's certainly helpful, but then you meet life and you get older and things crash and things break and hearts break and there's pain and at that point there's a kind of, to use a Greek word, a kenosis that happens, a pouring into where you didn't realize it because you thought you were a good Advaitin, you thought you were a good non-dualist because you're talking about it all the time. But when things really start to break, there's a kenosis that happens where God pours from the outside into the inside. And there's no separation anymore. God is in the broken heart. God is in all the fragments of your life, all laying all around you. And so that's been my process too. And so is what I appreciate about listening to this most recent album well, I said this to Yasha the other day, that there's a sense uh, of like it's maybe the most contemplative of your albums and reflective, and it has some grit in it and pain, and it also sounds the most mature. And and I love the old albums, but as I was listening to this, especially what is it, Great Storm Clouds. I love that song. You know, what's the line? It's part of nature to hold a bit of pain. And I thought, that's where my life is now. And the spirituality is not, this thing out there, but it's in it's in being able to hold that pain and not, turn it into more affliction. Like, because that's basically the difference between spiritual and not spiritual on the planet, is that, we all have pain, but do we become inflictors, because we have it? And does it become a pearl? You know, Not some kind of beautiful, enlightened thing, but a pearl of awareness that is like just space that holds more and more people and their journey. And so, at a point in which my life kind of fell apart, it was also the point at which, it felt like the journey really started. And it was because God had poured into reality, and it wasn't this kind of other outside that I'm always trying to leap toward. So, yeah. And I was thinking about stealing from the Baul singers, it's like I don't know if it's a secret or not, but like all artists are thieves. And I remember once I saw this Jamaican cookbook. It says, you steal two eggs. If you're going to make an omelet, you steal two eggs, because it was just trying to be real about, we took these from the chickens. So, yeah, I really get it. And so in some ways, though I have like great love of like, is it everything, every time, everywhere? Or do I got that a little mixed up? I really love that album, and there's a lot of charge out of it. The grounding of this one is really where I'm at this age in my life, and the reflection of my own heart in the words in this music are really great. So, yeah.
That means a lot. Thank you. Yeah, it really resonated with a lot of that. When I was thinking a lot about how the Balls, when they sing, there's a lot of their songs are about lamentation, like or death, or how your body's just a pile of ashes, and we're all going to the same place, or how who can you call your own? Nobody is your own. But they're singing all these songs with a huge smile on their face, you know, like laughing. They're singing in the cremation grounds, about how we're all going to die and our bodies are going to burn on this pyre right here, but they're all laughing, and that's always been a huge lesson for me. Um, and I think on this album, there are songs of heartbreak and struggle and stuff like this, but I feel like this record, I was able to do that with joy rather than. I really liked how you said. What did you say about the if you have pain, but not turning it into something even like more poisonous, right, or more toxic. Pain is such a great blessing, and all the teachers that I've met have gone through so much hardship, and I think in the West, I think, and I certainly had this kind of uh, preconceived notion. I think that's what the words are. That, you know, the spiritual path is just this beautiful, blissful journey. And when you get on it, like everything happens for you and everything becomes aligned and, you know, the whole thing, you know. And it's just so opposite of that, I think, you know. A great Indian saint named Crowley Baba, when a woman came to him and was crying and said, "My oh Baba, my life is so full of suffering," and he looked down and smiled and said, "Mine too." You know, it's just it's the whole dance. You know, it's the whole dance. But I really loved that how we have these moments of pain and just being able to hold them, but not turn them into this not like gaping wound, you know, but using those things as or honoring those things for what they are, and in the process of doing that, the pain and the sadness and the broken hearts and all these things they become the medicine in a way, you know. It's I think Leonard Cohen said, you know, the crack in the wall is how the light gets in or something, you know. So Leonard Cohen, great musician, but obviously a very intense Zen practitioner. So it's a good example of art and spirituality meeting. Yeah, that's beautiful. Super beautiful.
We've got this saying in our tradition that only a broken heart is whole. You know, a heart that's never been broken, you can't even feel or hear another heart, and so only a broken heart creates wholeness and is whole. And you know, just talking about this place where art meets spirituality, and I'm thinking about um, how art is transformative for our emotions. Like there was that wonderful study of blues that was done, I don't know, a decade ago, where it's like singing the blues actually transformed the feelings around that you were singing about. And it like made wholeness out of the pain. It makes wholeness out of the pain. And I think that's what a lot of deep art is about.
Love that. You're blowing my mind here. Love that.
You've been blowing mine for years, so it's
I don't know about that. Uh,
Well, it's funny too because I think both the Sufi lineage that Nathaniel is connected to and a lot of your music, Trevor, also kind of reference back to certain Indian and Hindu traditions, which do talk about that way that the venom or the poison becomes medicine. So I think that's kind of a theme. I'm curious. I also notice on the album that you bring Emery, your wife, on, and I feel like that's another part of this conversation because, in general, we're talking about how certain elements, like the creativity, like we're hurting, right, and we're feeling the pain of life in one way or another, and then bringing in the artistic process and processing it through creativity. There's that line where you say, there's no tradition, nothing's by the book, because even though it's, you know, one might call it deeply spiritual music, it's your personal process. It's just real and raw. And so I feel like the art in that way, it's not forced. You're not contriving anything. It's part of your own healing. And I'm curious, I want to come back around to the relationship aspect in a sec, but I'm curious how you feel that plays into your creative process. Does the art serve as part of your integration of the different insights and lessons you're receiving from your teachers and your life ups and downs along the way? Because to me, from outside, it feels like this platform where you're sharing that with the masses. And I don't know that that's your only intention. And I think that's a beautiful result, that it is spreading to the world through stealing eggs from the chickens. The musicians are taking these teachings and sharing them with the world. But on the inside, it's something that you really need. You know, maybe you're staying up at night writing a song or whatever it might be. But I'm just curious to hear that link between what happens after the life experience, but before it's suddenly transforming 10,000 people's weekend.
No, that's a really, really good question. It's making me think, you know. For me, I never, it's really hard for me to explain because it's really beyond reason for me. Music is, oh, hey, buddy. You okay? Sorry, my pup just walked in. Um, Music is not it's not a thing where I'm writing for, I'm not thinking about the crowds. I'm not thinking about the people. I'm not thinking, you know, and that's why it's such a healer. A lot of the times I don't know if I'm singing a song or the song is singing me, to be honest. And that's what makes it such a mystical experience for me. I never wanted to be a musician. It was just in me. It was just, music was just, I don't know, some people find that strange. They're like, you never wanted to like be a professional. I'm like, it just happened, and music has always been that thing that I've been able to surrender to. And it just happens that these songs that come to me or come through me or whatever, and I'm sure any other artist can perhaps relate in some way, there's a state where you disappear, and it's just this creation, this creative shakti, this force, whatever it may be, that's moving through you. And it's such a blissful feeling, when you're really in the flow, and you're just not there anymore. There's no, your small self, I should say, is not there anymore. So there's no intention. There's no, for me at least, there's no intention. There's no premeditated thoughts. Because when it comes to music, I don't want to be involved. I don't want to be involved, I want it to do what it wants to do. Of course, there's like experiences that happen in my life that I write about and this and that, but even then in the process, it's like that experience is unpacking itself through me in this sonic painting, and I just share the things that have touched my heart. That's it. I'm not thinking like, oh, I am writing for the people or for this or for, like it's really not like that for me. If it gets like that, it gets so messed up and I almost get like a writer's block, or I'm not able to really, I don't feel like I'm in a honest space, I guess. So for me, it's just the songs come and they touch my heart and they help me so much. They bring me so much joy, and I just want to share that joy. And if people like it, great. If not, great. I just, yeah, I don't know if that fully answers the question, but there's no like premeditated, yeah, like regimen or process like that. When that happens, it just doesn't work for me. That's just me. That's just how it's my process, I guess.
Mm. I think that does answer the question beautifully. And the other question I was leaning towards there, where you bring your wife onto the album, is how I think relationship can be really grounding, both as a performer in the public eye that you are, and on the spiritual path in general, human relationship, personal relationship. So I'd love to hear from both of you. I know that love figures greatly into especially Sufism. So I'd be curious to hear from Netanel just about that. And also from you, Trevor, how I'm curious if you feel that, being family, I don't know if family oriented is the right term necessarily, but having those responsibilities of taking care of each other and caring for someone near you, is if that maybe is some kind of also grounding or protection that really helps make it a bit more sustainable and a bit more, you could say, integrated to be performing like you do and to share your gifts with the world. So either one of you.
Go ahead, sir.
Relationship, huh? Well, I guess from a few different perspectives, I think about this. One, as a public spiritual teacher, whatever that means, there are a lot of projections. And really, it's kind of the heaviest burden of the whole thing because, the projection doesn't really want to allow for your person, you know? The person has to go to the bathroom or needs a break from all of this talk or doesn't want to talk any more spiritual talk for a while or and and then the projections from if you're heterosexual from the opposite sex and it can be a heavy deal and it's very grounding to have a good relationship and that relationship can be like a shield or a sieve for some of these projections and to be able to go home to that person who cares about you for who you are with all the imperfections is just profoundly healing if you can get it. And related to that, I think in terms of spirituality, not everybody agrees about this, but I really feel like, while there's a perennial element to spirituality, something that is always the same and never changing, um, in terms of humanity and consciousness, there are also paradigm shifts that have to do with how we relate to that perennial element of spirituality. And I feel like one of the most profound for us today is integrating relationship into our spiritual path. In fact, I would say relationship is probably the key to understanding our spirituality today. Because no matter what the tradition is, be it, a Hindu tradition, a Sufi tradition, a Hasidic tradition, Christian contemplative tradition, almost all of the writings that we're kind of basing ourselves on are medieval and kind of monastic oriented, which means there's something that they can't address for us. It will be our contribution to the wisdom of the future is how to work out that spiritual path vis-a-vis of this mirror in our life, of a lover. And that's how Sufism really deals with it. That person is an opportunity, but not just an opportunity. They're whole in themselves. But they're a mirror to witness yourself. And in witnessing yourself, then you have an opportunity and a responsibility to address some things. And so I really feel like it's the most challenging place and it's the most beautiful and blessed place for us. And those two things are bound, the challenge and the beauty. And you don't get the beauty without the challenge and and the most profound challenge is there because you're called to the beauty. So yeah, for me it's almost the most important thing right now in terms of my spiritual path, that relationship.
Mm, so beautiful. Um, yeah, I'm just taking that in. um, yeah, it's the monastic element, as you say, to so many of these traditions that have come down. That even in my own journey, that's always sometimes caused a lot of pain or heartbreak, because it's like is it not is it lower, to be in a physical relation, like this? And that's not a healthy way to think. Um, I'm just thinking about when my wife and I got married um, in India. I proposed to her at our ashram there. Um, when we came back to the ashram to see our Guruji, who is a sannyasi, monastic, um, monk. Um, in the Hindu tradition, the sannyasis, these monks, they're not allowed to even attend weddings. That's not their path. Their path is the path of renunciation, external renunciation, as well as internal. Um, but our Guruji, when we came back into the ashram after I proposed, he said, "Go gather these things and meet me in the shrine." And he brought us in the shrine, and he himself married us, you know, out of his love. And we felt no lesser or nothing like that. It was just so beautiful. The heart conquers all. And at one point, one of our brother senior guru bhais, he looked at us, I'll never forget, and he said, sometimes you're Shiva and sometimes she's Parvati. And then he said, sometimes she's Shiva and sometimes you're Parvati, meaning sometimes you're the disciple, you know, and she's the guru, and vice versa. And that has just stuck with me so deeply, over the years, and it's been true. I've learned so much, and I had all these misconceptions about what an authentic spiritual path kind of meant, and just like you were um, saying before about that poem, I forget the line. I see your robe of patches. Or no, there's no tradition, right? Nothing's by the book, you know. That's kind of the fun part, I think, on the path when we have all these preconceived notions of what it means to be on a spiritual path and how you dress, and I gotta have a long beard and jutta, and I gotta be wearing a robe and all that stuff. And when all that's shattered, when you learn like the greatest spiritual lesson from like your gas station attendant, or which has happened, or like, I don't know, from like just somebody that you would least expect it. When those preconceptions are shattered, it's that broken heart maybe that you're talking about, right? That's when the love and the light can really manifest, because we're just letting go of so many attachments. And I think my relationship with my wife has been the greatest teacher of my journey. Um, you know, I would not like I just would not be able to learn the things I've learned without having her in my life, without having that partner, you know. And and I fully honor that. It's funny because the Baos, they all get married. To bring it back to the Baos, they all get married, they all have children, right? They kind of go, but they all wear orange, just like sannyasis, right? They break this, they shatter this mold. Sri Ramakrishna, one of my greatest inspirations, Bengali mystic, he said that there's two ways to fight, right? The sannyasi's out there in the open, right? He's out there in the open, but the householders, they get to fight within a fort, you know? Um, and he said that a partner on the spiritual path is one of the greatest blessings. He himself was a sannyasi. He himself was also married. So those things that shatter, I guess, those those preconceived notions. I really appreciated that what you said, Professor. That um, it's like so that monastic trip for like the spiritual life is it's painful when you get stuck in that. It's really caused me a lot of confusion at first and still does sometimes, you know. But maybe that's part of it. You know, maybe that confusion is part of it to like constantly kind of, you know, mess us up in a way. Because when we get messed up like that is when we can surrender, I think. And that's when something comes in, right? We're like, oh. But in terms of my relationship, like you're asking, I always go back to that line that our Guru Bhai said. And it's because it's so true, you know. All the balls they revere the wife as the guru because they know that Radha, Krishna's beloved, was in full control, right? So they revere all their wives as, you know, the guru, in fact. So those types of things I like. I like when it gets shooken up. Um, and I also like to look on my own experience, you know, and my own experience in my relationship has been one of great learning. And like I said, I wouldn't have been able to learn the things I have without that mirror, without that divine uh, partner in my life.
I like I have a friend who's a wonderful monk of the Ramakrishna order, and he was telling me about
What's his name?
Swami Atmarupananda.
Oh yeah, he is he in uh what center is he in?
It, they had him back in Bengal for a while. Now he's in Texas.
Rupananda, I feel like I know. Anyway, sorry to interrupt, but
No, no,
go ahead.
he's a wonderful sage, and he was talking once about Ramakrishna's pilgrimage to discover Shakti, and how he would go visit, you know, a great scientist, a great musician, a great artist, because he wanted to see, you know, and you know, always kind of geniuses, because he wanted to see the most powerful manifestations of Shakti, the divine feminine energy, as it comes through everywhere. And it's just like uh, remembering that it is everything is a manifestation of that and an opportunity to worship and learn. And he was only looking for the most intensified forms, but really it's available, you know. Our partners are that manifestation of Shakti, you know, for us to learn from the energetic, the pulsing energetic form that is dynamic and which you have to learn to relate to and dance with. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. So true. Thakur always taught that to all of his householder disciples, you know. Some of them wanted to leave the world. Some of them wanted to become sannyasis, and he said no. He said that your path is here, you know. So that's refreshing, you know. He wasn't like, yeah, just give it. He's like, what will happen to your wife and children and this and that, you know. He one of my favorite lines was he would tell his householders that you should live like a maidservant lives in their master's home, right? A maidservant comes to the house, she takes care of all the master's children and says, "My oh my Ram, my Hari," but she knows in her heart that those children are not her own, and she knows that that house is not her own. Her mind is in the country, right? So it's like that. You have to take care of. This is all Ma's, you know. This is all, and we're just custodians. I think it's a beautiful. I believe it's a really safe attitude, really beautiful attitude, you know, to be a servant of the servant, as they say in Bao culture.
There's several lines in the album that comments both of you were making. I actually wrote down when I was listening to the album, and then both of you were practically quoting the lines that stood out to me. Um, there's that one. I'm a hip hop artist, so I catch the rhyme schemes, and there's that one where you talk about the mirror of the heart. How does it go? The rise, because there's a little play on your rise, your rise and
My
shine.
Mirror of the Heart. What song is that? What song is that?
It's like we've got to clean. Well,
On the new
um,
album? Okay,
yeah,
okay, hold on. What? Give me more clues.
cleaning
Give
the
me more
eyes.
clues.
Um, uh, Basically, there's a line that in the Sufi and Hasidic teachings that Nathaniel shares sometimes, there's this idea of polishing the mirror of the
Uh,
heart. And there's a line in one of your songs where you talk about like the mirror of the heart, and then you mention something about cleaning the eyes. We've got to clean your eyes and shine, which I thought was a
oh
play
yeah,
on
yeah,
rise
yeah,
and
yeah,
shine.
yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. More than love. I got it now. Sorry, sorry. The mirror of the heart it never lies. Gotta purify our eyes and shine. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sorry, I was took me a second.
No, it's
Yeah.
good.
Well, that mirror of the heart is a a term that I've heard from so many different teachers. Obviously, like so many different traditions. So the idea being that that supreme, I guess, pure spirit is ever present, right? It's not something that we're attaining or something like this. It's just that there's some dust on the mirror, and the dust is all of that stuff, all of our stuff. So that term is used. Oh, cleanse the mirror of the heart, and you will see the reality. Um, Purify your eyes and shine, like this. Um, that's just the process, I guess, because we all think even all the time. It's like I got to get this thing, I got to get this happiness, I got to get this joy, I gotta get this enlightenment and all this stuff, because our sense we're always going out, 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 you know. So they say to turn the mirror upon itself, or turn the vision upon inward. They call the Baals backwards pilgrims, right? Because they're going against the river, So yeah, cleansing the mirror of the heart. It's a process.
I think what I'm getting at is that it's basically every single line has like 10 Zoom calls like this of teachings behind it. Um, anyway, so I was just saying
Sorry, I
that
just had
it
to close the
seems
door.
like, oh, no worries. Just that listening to the album, I guess what I'm getting at is that hearing every other line, it's just embedded with stories and teachings that could take 10, podcast episodes like this to unpack. Another one was where you're singing with your wife and you say, I see your nature, you see my maker. And just little details like that stand out of like, well, that's just, poetry and you're not contriving it. It's just visionary flow. It's not on purpose, but then you hear it and you also say, but it's got some of the deepest esoteric teachings embedded within it, showing, that interplay of the Shiva and Parvati, as you say, and the maker creator archetype or the nature immanence and so on. There's so many like that. Uh, the remembrance in I remember you, do you remember too? You were, are, will be. That also stood out to me. All these little details that I think go really deep. Um, I don't know, Nathaniel, if you want to chime in on any of that, feel free. Otherwise, I'm surprised neither of you have started telling any stories. I mean, it's all I hear either of you do when I normally hear both of you
I have
speak.
too many. I have so many stories, Lord. Uh,
I guess I do want to chime in, because I was thinking
Chime
about,
in, chime in.
I was saying something, I was thinking about something you were saying earlier, Trevor, about just about process and like trying to get out of the way of the process. And related to what Yasha was just saying about, whether it's, as a visual artist, as a painter, use my paintings in the background and or my basic archetype, like everybody's got an archetype from which they operate. And even as a spiritual teacher, I still operate like an artist, I think. And and it's kind of about how to, you know, how do you relate to the flow that is available? Like there's a flow that is available like a signal that's just out there, and are you tuned to it or not? And there are two ways to make bad art or bad spirituality. And one is like we were talking about like, oh, do you write for the masses, That would be one way to make bad art, because you're not connected, it's contrived. And then on the other end, you can write reference that is so personal. If you're writing poetry, your references are too tight, they're too related to some specific event in your life, and you close people out. There's not enough for people in general to relate to. And the art or the spirituality are really somewhere in the middle where you're responding to like a primal call. I'm going to put this in some religious terms. It's almost like a teleological echo. And that just means like the echo of the future that exists in the present that calls forth the future. Like that's like God's calling from the future into our present saying, come to this place. And for me, a lot of my, most relevant spiritual talk and practice is a response to that call. And the same with my art. And I think it can't be anything contrived or else it goes wrong. Like if I'm trying to like if I want to get some sophisticated non-dual idea into a painting, it's going to be crap. But if it comes from the integration, like almost the chemical reaction to this person with that flow, then you'll get something that is personal and true and reflective, of, what is rich and good. It doesn't always happen, and sometimes there's a mixture, but I think this is true whether it's the spiritual path or the artistic process. It's being somewhere in the middle where you're not absent of person because there's a reaction happening. It has to come through a vessel, but it's not about your vessel. And so, I love this discussion. I think it's where the real is in all of this.
Thanks, Nathaniel. I have one last question for you, Trevor, and you can go wherever you want with it.
I'm still just taking all that in.
Yeah, we can have a moment.
No, go ahead. It's good. I just like it's really beautiful.
Yeah. Well, Nathaniel, I'm really glad we're doing this all together. I'm, excited to be able to host. And also Nathaniel has been a close personal mentor, not just a co-founder of the festival with me, but a spiritual friend and mentor to me for years. So I'm very glad that we get to experience both your insights and how, there's so much parallel and intersection, not only with where we're all living right now, but also with the actual discussions and things we want to talk about. So my question is this. I know, this is probably something you've spoken to several times now. It's probably one of the more activating and controversial tracks on the album is The Fire on Your House. I think, different people have different responses to it. For me, it's probably my favorite. It's my favorite, I would say. And I think that Nathaniel's talk of theological echo seems to be a theological echo of what I wanted to ask next, which is that in the past, I remember in, I think, Fruitful Darkness, your last album, right? There's a song where you're, I feel a deep prayer as you're singing about that you're still learning how to live in your fire. And there's this, thread, this echo that runs from that album to this song, on an elemental level, where these elements, which is a core part of my practice, the altar that we keep here at our community is with the fire and the water, the air and the earth, and that's kind of all centered around the spirit. But that's our altar place, and one that I think is pretty universal in many initiatic traditions. And so I'm curious how this process, it seems to be very real, like, and continuous, right? Years later, you're still singing about fire. And what stands out to me is that the first time I hear you singing about it, you're saying, I'm learning how to live in my fire. It's like you're telling yourself and affirming that that's where you're headed.
Mm.
And then the next time we hear from you, you're just firing. You're fire. So I just want to congratulate you on that. And I heard you calling it the hissing song, and something that I also noticed is that fire, I mean, we think snakes hiss, right? But fire also hisses.
Mm.
And so I'm curious if you could just speak to your relationship to the elements and to your fire and how that's coming through in this song, what it means for you and in general.
Oh man, yeah, that's a deep one. um,
I asked it right when the time's up, so we've got you
uh,
hooked.
no, I'm good. I'm thinking about, um, yeah, wow, just thinking about so much. Um, there's kind of many places I guess I could start, or there's many avenues to talk about this song because it was a very big decision on the record. It wasn't a light decision to include the song or not, and this and that. Because the song came through when I was obviously in a very angry place, and I had so much pent up, and I recorded it here in my home as for me to just have this kind of cathartic healing, like, let it out. Never intending to release it, never intending to put it anywhere like this. And I only played it for like a few friends and my wife and my manager, and they're all like, you have to release the song. I was like, no way, I can't. Like, why not? Right? And this was like Ma's sword, Mother Kali's sword, because um yeah, I'm just gonna go down this path for a second. We create our personas, you know, and being in the public eye, like an artist or anything like this, there's a lot of other people creating your persona, unconsciously, consciously, whatever it may be, but all these things kind of add up, and before you know it, you're in this kind of role, I guess. And there's a point where um, you kind of see the role holding you back or something, or yeah, it's like you feel like you can only act within this role, right? So in my instance, right, I've always the songs that have always come through me have always been kind of I don't know, spiritual, bright, um, meditative, whatever, you know. And I was always known as that, oh, he's the spiritual singer, of his age or whatever. It'd always drive me nuts. But I was just like, whatever, it is what it is. I can't put out an angry song, no way, because that doesn't fit my persona, right? And and then it goes to I'm not allowed to be angry. right? I can only be peaceful and understanding and all this stuff. Which that's what I thought, and I didn't, and in the process of that being not only just in the music business, but in life, you get taken advantage of in all these types of things, and we tend on the spiritual path to look down upon anger or these types of things. You just have to be this really clean, like, person and agree with everybody. Like, and that always pissed me off. You know, I mean, to be honest, it just pissed me off because I felt like this isn't working somehow. So in that sense, right, I needed to put the song out, um, because this record was about being honest in every aspect of my human, right? Um, Anger is is an emotion, and it's it needed to be expressed to get the whole picture, I guess. And if people like it, right, because it's direct, like you said, it's your favorite song. That's really cool. Great. If people don't like it, right, that's also great because I'm shattering a perception again. Oh, Trevor Hulk, I got so many, so many messages and comments like, this isn't you. And I'm like, oh, thank you. I didn't know that, but thank you so much. So it worked. It was like a double-edged sword for me because it helped me get out of my attachment to a persona. And I think it also helped people like, because in the public eye, we look at all these singers, celebrities. I mean, I do the same thing. Like, I'm not saying I'm a celebrity or anything, but I'm just saying that people in the public eye, you're like, they're not human, you know? And I love it when something happens and you're like, oh, shit, they're human. That's cool, you know? So that was one sense of the song, right? The other sense was the hissing story, right, that Sri Ramakrishna tells so beautifully of the monk that goes into the village, right, a wandering sadhu, and he comes to this village, and in this village there's a snake that lives in this field, and is very harmful to anybody that enters the field, hisses and bites and the whole thing, poisonous snake. So the villagers tell this wandering sadhu, you cannot go, don't go out into this field because there's a snake that lives there and he'll bite you and you'll die. It's a poisonous snake. And the sadhu, I'm not afraid of this, I'm a sadhu. So he walks out and the snake comes out of its hole and raises its head, the whole thing. And when the snake sees the sadhu and sees his energy, he becomes transformed, right? It's a play on holy company, right? And the snake, hears the sadhu speak and is enlightening him like this with his words and says, I'll make you my disciple, right? I'll give you a holy mantra and don't harm anybody. Repeat this mantra and don't harm anybody. Change your nature, right? So the snake says, okay. So he starts repeating his holy mantra and he doesn't harm anybody. Well, the villagers, they realize, oh, this snake is not, harming us, so they're not afraid anymore. All the kids are out in the field, and when the snake comes out, they take the snake and they whipping it around and bashing it and the whole thing, and he's just getting like totally beaten up. So time passes, a year passes, whatever it may be. The wandering sadhu comes back to the village and says, "Where's my disciple?" And the villagers say, "Oh, he has died. That snake has died. We haven't seen him anymore." Like this. And the sadhu says, "That's impossible because of the mantra I gave him." Right? So he goes out into the field, he calls for his disciple, snake slithers out of its hole, and he's, no food, hasn't eaten, bashed the whole thing, and he doesn't want to come out of his hole because the kids will pick him up and the whole thing, and he's like super weak. And sadhu says, "Oh, what has happened to you?" He said, Maharaj, I'm doing my sadhana and my whole, repeating this mantra, and the sadhu says, why are you so thin like this? He says, well, the kids now they pick me up and bash me and all this stuff. And why didn't you protect yourself? He said, well, Guruji, you told me not to harm anybody, not to bite anybody. And he said, I told you not to bite, but I didn't tell you not to hiss, right? And that's that hissing element, right? Where we have to be able to show that energy sometimes and it can be used, I think, in a righteous way, right? When Mother Kali lifted her sword, was it not an act of compassion? Was her anger not that, when she was on the battlefield, this story where she slays the demons? Um, it is out of that fierce grace, right? As Ram Dass would say, fierce compassion. So that's always been uncomfortable for me to because I felt for some reason, no, that's not right. I have to be again, like this. Um, and one of my teachers says, he always says, be a devotee, but don't be a fool. So we have to, I guess it's just exploring that realm of the fire, of it not being a negative quality or something. That fire is obviously a purifying, if you're talking about the element itself, right? It can burn you, but it also cooks your food. So you have to know how to use it, I guess. And it's just that process of learning what that element is within my own body and not putting it out, you know. Um, Again, a whole lesson for me in attachment and what's right and what's persona and perception and all these things. It's just so funny. We just have this idea with spirituality. It's just so funny. Another beautiful story. See, now you're I told you, like, be careful what you wish for, right? But Krishna Das tells this beautiful story of Dada Mukherjee, who was a very very well-known devotee of Neem Karoli Baba. Neem Karoli Baba, the great mystic of India, used to come in the winter stay in Dada's house, um, and he called it his winter camp, right? But Dada Mukherjee is a professor at Allahabad University and very Western educated, didn't believe in anything like this, and then met Maharaji and became totally transformed, you know. So Krishna Das tells this story that he's in Allahabad where Dada lives, and it's the time of the Kumbh Mela, this great festival in Allahabad. And a sadhu from a visiting guru, invites Krishna Das to come stay in their camp out near the Sangam, near the meeting place of the rivers. So the monk comes to, because Krishna Das was staying at Dada's house, which is very near the Sangam. I've been lucky to gone there many times, and comes to pick up Krishna Das to escort him to the camp. And Krishna Das says the sadhu comes and he meets Dada, this like householder professor dude, in his eyes. And he just says he treats him so poorly, right? He just writes him off as this just whatever guy. And Krishna Das said he was extremely embarrassed at this, this sadhu comes and, and the whole thing. And before Krishna Das leaves, Dada says, I have to show you something, and Krishna Das is like, okay. And at this time, Dada's very old, and he's walks up the stairs with Krishna Das to this room, and he has this almirah, this cupboard, and under lock and key, he opens up the cupboard, and in one section of the cupboard is this mound of like rags and stuff, something inside it, and Dada takes out the this thing, whatever. Krishnadas doesn't know what it is, and he starts taking off the rags, and it's a kamandalu, right? It's a water pot. A lot of this sadhus carry with them like this. They're usually made of like brass and all this stuff, but it's just this, very like kind of dirty, rusted almost thing. And he told Krishna Das that I think Maharaji gave it to him, and he looked at Krishna Das and he said, "See, Krishna Das, you don't have to shine." And Krishna Das was like, "Oh my God, He's like, "You don't have to shine." Um, this sadhu came in all of his holy garb, trying to have this, I guess, aura. And here's this professor, from Allahabad that had the grace of being with one of the greatest mystics of the time. And that's what he said to Krishnadas. He said, "You don't have to shine." And Krishnadas was just completely, um, yeah, just taken with that. I forget why I told the story now, but it's a good story. Um, yeah, you know, we don't have to. I think it's just like I've been thinking so much about the misconception of like the spiritual path, you know, and I just don't I can't stand it um, when we try to put ourselves in a persona or something to be quote holy, and in the process we're not even being ourselves. I just think that that's ridiculous, you know. Um, some of the most spiritual people I've met have no spiritual path at all. They're just authentically themselves and don't deny any of they're so yeah, they're just so comfortable in themselves. They're not acting in any particular way. So that's kind of what I've been trying to work on in myself, is just trying to be authentic in every moment and not try to um, cut off any parts of myself to fit some idea of what I think it means to be a good person or holy person or something like that. Oh, God, I just talked for so long. I probably seem like such a poop head, but I told you not to ask me to tell stories. I just love stories.
That was our goal. Uh, we're getting some gold nuggets here. I don't
Great.
know if Nathaniel wanted to chime in with some last words before I close this out here.
Yeah, just that I thought that that was great. Both stories are great, and I really felt like the second one was coming from the place of like, you know, not necessarily the point of, you don't have to shine in terms of, be in the spotlight, but in terms of like it it doesn't always have to be pretty. The path isn't always going to be pretty and the hissing story was really reminding me of something my teacher used to say about how valuable it is to have uh, a persona, in fact, more than one, and even one that is fierce, because it's valuable to know how to growl. He would say sometimes you have to, but the point I think on the spiritual path is that it's a persona, you're not identified with it. When you're totally identified with it, then you are the thing. But when you know it's a persona, let me put this mask on. I need to be a little bit fierce to be effective, or I'm feeling that, but I know I can say I'm feeling this, not I am, I always use the example of, anger. We always say I'm angry, which means I am anger. But when you say I'm experiencing a lot of anger, then there's just enough distance to not get it twisted, you get yourself twisted up with the anger. And then you got a little room to maneuver around it and you don't hit necessarily, but you express. And I think it's a really important point about like how we read scripture and spiritual books. We always read them as prescriptive, like they're telling us how to behave, but they're not all prescriptive. Sometimes they're expressive. And it's the same with music or scripture. Like the Bible has a lot of psalms, which are songs, you know, and the Song of Songs is all about eros. It's all about erotic desire, and it's saying that's something that we feel. And then the Psalms of David, people always read these and go, oh, that doesn't seem like how I should behave. Well, it's not being prescriptive about how you should behave. It's David saying, I'm feeling awful. I'm feeling angry. And in both the Christian and the Jewish tradition, you pray the Psalms like you sing somebody else's song so that you can run through the manifold emotions that we have as human beings and get to experience them um, when we're not necessarily in them. We try them on when we're not necessarily in them so that we're like in good contact with all the kinds of things we can feel. Yeah, sometimes it's anger, you know, sometimes it's sadness, sometimes it's bitterness. But we try them on in a spiritual context to kind of clean them up a little bit. And so I think that's a big confusion. We think everything has to be prescriptive. And some of it's just expressive. The art is in just like, this has got to come out. And maybe like it speaks to Yasha, you know? And like, yeah, I know where that's at. Doesn't mean I'm going to hurt anybody. Doesn't mean that I'm going to wish them ill. It means that I have the feelings about that. So I think it's a really important song, and I think it's a real important messaging about still knowing how to hiss and having access to that. Because if we don't have access to that, then we just get, you know, trampled like the poor snake. So
Absolutely.
like I really appreciate that story.
Yeah, that's beautiful though. That's really I love that. It's not all prescriptive, you know. I've gotten myself so mixed up with reading certain things, you know, thinking that I have to apply everything, you know. Um, again it's exploring each emotion. It's like, you know, with the balls, you know, sorry to bring it back to them. They're just my place. But when they sing, right? When we're singing these songs that were written by the masters, right? We're not we're not we may not be feeling exactly right what they have felt and this and that, but by singing their songs, we're exploring again, like you said, that emotion, and we're putting ourselves in that seat, you know, and that's kind of the practice, you know. Naturally, those things will wash off on us and affect us, and but yeah, I love that. Not everything is prescriptive. It's just it's really beautiful, really beautiful. So don't go burn anybody's houses, is what I'm trying to say. It's not the point of the song. Anyhow,
Unless those houses are the personas that we've adopted
yeah,
from people's
inside
projections.
you. Yeah, inside you. Yeah.
Um, I'm glad you brought it back to the bowels because all this persona talk brought me back around to where I started with Jungian psychology. And I'm seeing this beautiful paradox in what the two of you are saying, where they're both saying the same thing in almost opposite ways, in the sense that um, the emotions like anger and sadness,
Mm,
we're not over identifying with them, but we also have to remember that our nature, or our, you know, whatever ineffable, also over identifies with quote unquote positive things as well. And so
mm,
if that's being, you know, in an inspiring way, a celebrity in the sense of a famous artist, or someone who promotes spirituality and understanding and peace, and then suddenly we're so identified with the light that we can't, you know, be ourselves. And so being the self ourselves, whatever that means in the moment, it seems like without getting stuck on whether that, so that we can more fully from that space that's not completely caught in any of them, really include and participate in all of them, including both the difficult and the beautiful. So that's all I really had to say there. We're at our time here, and
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, thank you so much. It's been really a beautiful conversation. I really learned so much, and just appreciate being included for sure. It's really beautiful.
Likewise.
Likewise. Yeah. So
Alrighty.
speaking of fire, thanks for visiting the Heart Fire Festival, and
Yes,
I hope we can stay in touch. I think maybe do
I hope
something
so
like this
too.
again. Yeah.
I hope so too. Yeah, thank you so much. Jai Guru.
Peace. Our mission is peace.